The command cut through the marble hall like a blade. Foreign words, sharp and unfamiliar, froze soldiers and silenced reporters. Confusion spread. No one understood. No one except the quiet cleaning lady pushing her mop. And when she snapped to attention, the hall learned a secret that would change everything. The command cracked through the air like thunder. Sharp syllables foreign to every ear in the marble hall rang out with such force that conversations died mid-sentence. Soldiers stopped mid-step. Reporters lowered their pens. Even a flicker of camera flashes seemed to pause. No one understood the words. No one except her. Elena, the cleaning lady in a plain gray uniform, sleeves rolled up, a mop in her hands. For months, she had walked these polished floors unseen, blending into the background, a shadow in a place filled with uniforms, medals, and power. But now those words, she thought she'd never hear again, had cut through her silence and pulled her back into a world she had buried. Her fingers tightened on the mop handle until her knuckles whitened. Her heart pounded. She recognized the command instantly. She had lived it before, and in that instant, she knew her life was no longer hidden. The general at the podium didn't repeat himself. He didn't explain. His voice, steady and commanding, needed no translation. His gaze moved across the room, skipping past uniforms, journalists, and dignitaries until it landed on her. The air seemed to hum with an energy only the two of them could feel. Elena's legs moved before her mind caught up. Step by step, she crossed the marble expanse. Every echo of her footsteps carried shadows of her past. Boots pounding dirt roads, stretcher straps digging into her shoulders, the desperate cries of the wounded calling her name. The whispers started almost immediately. Who's she? What's going on? Is he calling the cleaner? But Elena didn't hear them. Her world had narrowed to the general's steady gaze and the weight of a command that had once meant life or death. Elena had not always been invisible. At 22, she had worn a different uniform. She had been a field medic in a war fought far from home, in places the news never named. Her days had been filled with bandages, blood, and prayers whispered under fire. She remembered the smell of antiseptic mixing with dust, the burn of gunpowder in her throat, the metallic tang of blood on her hands that no soap could wash away. She remembered the cries of soldiers, boys barely older than her, calling her name in desperation. And she remembered that command barked in a language that demanded instant obedience. The rally call, the words that meant, brace yourself, gather the wounded, hold the line no matter what. On the night everything collapsed, Elena had carried a bleeding man on her back through mud, her knees buckling but refusing to fall. She had patched wounds with trembling hands under the flicker of dying flashlights. She had kept working when the radio screamed for help and ammunition ran low. She had answered every call, dragged every soldier she could reach, and refused to quit until the sun broke over smoke-filled hills. But when the war ended, she brought it home in silence. The nightmares kept her awake. The memories kept her isolated. She buried her medals in a drawer and folded her uniform away. No one asked questions when she took a job cleaning the marble halls of a military facility. The work was quiet. The floors needed no explanations. A mop and bucket asked nothing of her past. She became invisible by choice, blending into the background where no one expected heroism from someone pushing a cleaning cart. Years passed in steady routine. She scrubbed the same floors where officers walked, where ceremonies honored the decorated, where cameras captured moments of glory. And she remained unseen, a shadow, a ghost of who she had been. Until today, until those words shattered her carefully constructed anonymity and dragged her back into the light. Now, standing before the general, Elena felt the weight of every hidden year pressing down on her shoulders. His hand rested there, steady and firm, a gesture that said more than any speech could convey. He knew. He remembered. And in his eyes, she saw the reflection of the soldier she had been, the medic who had saved lives under fire, the woman who had carried wounded men through hell and refused to let them die alone. The general turned to address the hall, his voice carrying the authority of decades in service. He spoke of the command he had given, the foreign words that only one person in this room understood. A rally call from a war most had forgotten, from battles fought in places the maps rarely showed, from operations where survival depended on medics who refused to abandon the wounded. He spoke of field medics who worked under fire, who carried soldiers twice their size, who patched arterial bleeds with shaking hands and kept men alive long enough to reach evacuation. He spoke of the courage it took to run toward gunfire instead of away from it, to answer every desperate call for help, to hold the line when retreat seemed like the only sane option. The crowd listened in silence. Reporters stopped scribbling. Officers stood straighter. Cameras focused on Elena, capturing the moment when invisibility gave way to recognition. The general's words painted a picture of who she had been, what she had done, the lives she had saved in conditions that would have broken most people. And then he told them about her. Not by name at first, but by action. The medic who had worked a 72-hour shift without rest. The woman who had carried 3 wounded soldiers to safety in a single night. The field surgeon who had performed emergency procedures under mortar fire with nothing but a headlamp and determination. Elena stood still, her hands no longer gripping the mop, but hanging at her sides. She hadn't asked for this. She had spent years trying to forget, to blend in, to be nobody. But the general's words were peeling back the layers of anonymity she had wrapped around herself like armor. The officers in the room began to understand. This wasn't just a cleaning lady. This was a veteran who had served with distinction, who had earned respect on battlefields they had only read about in reports. The whispers changed tone. No longer confusion, but awe. No longer dismissal, but recognition of someone who had walked through fire and emerged scarred but unbroken. The general's hand remained on her shoulder, a connection between past and present, between the soldier she had been and the woman she had become. He spoke of the worst night, the night when enemy forces had surrounded a position and casualties mounted faster than helicopters could evacuate. The night when a young medic, barely 22 years old, had refused to leave even when ordered to retreat. She had stayed with the wounded, working by flashlight, her hands steady even as explosions shook the ground beneath her feet. Elena remembered that night in fragments. The weight of a soldier on her back as she dragged him through mud. The sound of his breathing, shallow and desperate, in her ear. The way her arms burned from carrying him, her legs threatening to give out with every step. But she hadn't stopped. She couldn't, because stopping meant he would die, and she had taken an oath to save lives, not abandon them. The general described how she had worked through the night, treating wound after wound, keeping men alive against impossible odds. How she had used the last of her supplies, improvised with whatever she could find, and refused to give up even when reinforcements seemed like they would never arrive. When dawn finally broke, she had saved 11 men. 11 soldiers who would have died without her. 11 families who got to see their sons, brothers, and fathers come home. The general's voice grew quieter as he finished the story, but his words carried more weight in the silence. Elena felt tears threatening, but refused to let them fall. She had cried enough in the years after the war. Cried in the dark when the nightmares woke her. Cried when she scrubbed floors and remembered the blood she had washed from her hands in field hospitals. Cried when she heard sirens and her body tensed, ready for casualties that never came. But she had also survived. She had found a way to keep living, even if it meant hiding who she had been. The cleaning job had given her peace, anonymity, a chance to be ordinary after years of extraordinary trauma. She had needed that invisibility to heal, to distance herself from the memories that haunted her. Now the general was taking that invisibility away, exposing her to a room full of strangers, forcing her back into the light. But as she looked at his face, she saw something unexpected. Not pity, not sympathy, but respect. The kind of respect one soldier gives another. The kind that says, I see you. I know what you did, and it matters. The officers in the hall began to move. One by one, they stood at attention, not because they were ordered to, but because they understood what they were witnessing. A veteran who had served in silence, who had carried her burden alone, who had asked for nothing and received even less. The reporters captured all. Cameras flashed. Pens scratched across paper. But the story they were recording wasn't about scandal or controversy. It was about honor, about a woman who had proven her courage on a battlefield and then disappeared into civilian life, unrecognized and unacknowledged. Elena's chest tightened. Part of her wanted to run, to grab her mop and return to the safety of anonymity. But another part, the part that had worn a uniform and saved lives, stood firm. She had earned this moment, even if she had never sought it. The general spoke her name for the first time. Elena, field medic, veteran, hero. Each word landed like a declaration, stripping away the disguise of ordinariness she had worn for so long. The crowd heard it and responded, not with polite applause, but with something deeper, recognition that transcended formality. The officers exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from surprise to understanding to respect. They had walked past her countless times, never knowing that the woman mopping their floors had saved more lives than most of them ever would. The realization hit them like a wave, and shame mixed with admiration on their faces. The reporters scribbled furiously, sensing they were witnessing something rare. A story of hidden heroism, of service without recognition, of courage that asked for nothing in return. This wasn't a manufactured moment for publicity. This was real, raw, a veteran finally being seen after years of invisibility. Elena stood taller, though she didn't mean to. Her body remembered how to carry itself with military bearing, even in a cleaning uniform. The applause began, tentative at first, then stronger, building like a wave until the entire hall erupted. Officers clapped with genuine respect. Reporters joined in, their professional detachment momentarily forgotten. Even the dignitaries, who had come expecting a routine ceremony, rose to their feet. Elena didn't know where to look. Her eyes found the general's face, and he nodded once. A simple gesture that said, "You deserve this. Accept it." His hand remained steady on her shoulder, anchoring her to the moment, preventing her from retreating back into the shadows. The sound washed over her, years of silence breaking apart under the weight of recognition. She had spent so long convincing herself that her service didn't matter anymore, that the war was behind her, that she was just a cleaner now. But the general had shattered that illusion with a single command in a language only she understood. She wasn't just a cleaner. She had never been just a cleaner. The uniform might have changed, but the person underneath remained the same. The medic who ran toward danger. The soldier who refused to quit. As the applause softened, Elena reached down and picked up her mop. The gesture surprised some in the crowd, but the general understood. She wasn't rejecting the recognition. She was showing them that her work, all of it, had dignity. The floors still needed cleaning. The job still mattered. She was still the same person, just no longer hidden. The marble floor gleamed beneath her feet, reflecting the lights and the faces of people who finally saw her. For years, she had believed her courage was buried under dust and silence, lost somewhere on a battlefield far from home. But courage doesn't disappear. It doesn't fade with time or hide behind different uniforms. It waits, and when called, it rises. The general knew it. The soldiers in that hall knew it. And now everyone watching knew it. Because bravery is not measured in medals or ceremonies or public recognition. It is measured in moments. In the choice to run toward danger instead of away. In the refusal to abandon those who need you. In a quiet strength to keep going when no one is watching. Elena was a soldier. She always had been.